The 2025 Belgian Grand Prix just took place. Not just, it's been a 24 hours since the race has been completed. I haven't had the time to make this video, but either way, we will go ahead and review how each driver and team has performed, starting with the worst performers of the weekend, ending with the highest scorers of the main race. First off, we have Aston Martin, and these guys have a shitbox. There is nothing much to say about it. They just don't have a good car, and the issues go all the way back to 2023 when these motherfuckers copied Red Bull. But if you remember, the Red Bull car is designed for Max Verstappen and only Max Verstappen can drive it. So as the 2023 season progressed, Fernando Alonso's podium appearances became rare and rare, and towards the end of 2023, he suffered the same fate as Sergio Perez. The same thing repeated in 2024, and because the car has the same philosophy, in 2025, they are also going to suffer for the remainder of the season. And if you look back, like the history of Aston Martin when they were known as Racing Point, they kind of had the similar philosophy as well. Like they copied Mercedes at the time. They were known as the Pink Mercedes in 2020. So the Aston Martin, they have a shitbox because they have copied an undrivable car which was designed around one driver who is the second coming of Jesus Christ, and now they don't know how to develop it. But fortunately, from 2026 onwards, it seems that these guys have all of the right ingredients in place except for Lance Stroll. So perhaps in 2026, Adrian Newey will cook up some magic, or at least provide these guys with the right foundation of a vehicle that can be developed further into the seasons afterwards. Up next, we have Haas. Now, I have mixed emotions about Haas because, first of all, I'm extremely happy that Esteban Ocon had a shit weekend. He started 11th, finished P15, because after the rain has subsided, their team came up with the amazing strategy of ruining his race by fitting used medium tires on his car. So basically, he was just slower for no reason, and he had a fresh pair of new hard tires. He could have put them on. And the thing about hard tires is, I think the hard tires were the faster tire. You could push the hard tires more and consistently, lap after lap after lap. If you look at Norris's times, you can clearly see that. If Haas has given Esteban Ocon the hard tires instead of the used medium, we would be looking at a completely different scenario. But thankfully, the rat-faced bastards race has been ruined. Fortunately, it's a great day for everybody, but I'm a little bit disappointed for Oliver Bearman because he had the pace. If it was not for Pierre Gasly's amazing defensive driving, and Pierre didn't even have DRS. I don't know how the fuck he did that. He's pulling Max Verstappen levels of drives in that Alpine. But Oliver Bearman definitely had the pace to go ahead and score some points, and he said that in the post-race interviews as well. Nothing crazy considering the pecking order and the crazy conditions, but he definitely could have scored P9 or P10 or something like that. P10 was definitely looking good. But with Isaac Hadjar having the issue and him struggling all the way back, P9 was also definitely on the table, especially when you consider that Gabriel Bortoleto got P9. So disappointed for Oliver Bearman, but it is what it is, and happy that Esteban Ocon had his race weekend ruined. Up next, we got Alpine. First of all, Pierre Gasly deserves all the money in the world for driving the tractor of an Alpine all the way up to the points. I don't know how he is doing it, and I know that in Spa, in those conditions, the overtaking opportunities are not that much. Basically, you have to get close and try to overtake between turn N and turn 5. That's the only opportunity you have in Spa, as we have found out. Regardless of how much of an advantage you have in Sector 2 and Sector 3, things kind of get nullified or negated in the bus stop chicane, which is the final chicane, and also turn 1. It gives the opportunity for the driver ahead to kind of reset themselves, have a good exit, and just pull away. So basically, you have to do it all over again, like right after the turn 1. So in turn 1, if you can close the distance, then only you have a possible opportunity before turn 5. Otherwise, you cannot do that. But I would like to give the entire credit to Pierre Gasly and his impeccable driving. I really don't know how he kept it on track and how he managed to defend against a charging Oliver Bearman, who had more pace clearly, but somehow he just managed to exit the bus stop chicane properly and also exit the turn one properly and just managed enough to stay ahead. Now, speaking of Franco Colapinto, he's actually had a good race. I know from the perspective of results, it doesn't look good because he started P15, went all the way back to P19. But if you look at his pace, I mean, this is the pit strategy. So let me just show you the lap time distribution. Here we go. So here, if you see Colapinto's graph and Gasly's graph, Colapinto's fastest time is faster than Gasly, and Colapinto's slowest time is only, I think, 3/10 slower than Pierre Gasly, which is not that bad. He has a huge fluctuation compared to Pierre Gasly, but he's getting there. He's finding the ideal operating window, unlike Yuki Tsunoda, whose operating window is like, whose pace scale is way outside of Max Verstappen. Max's slowest time is faster than Yuki Tsunoda's fastest time. But if you look at Franco Colapinto, he is finding the range, but because he is a rookie, he is a little bit rough around the edges. He is struggling to keep the car, or keep the tires rather, in the right window to maintain the pace in a perfect manner. So that's what I'm going to say about Franco Colapinto. It seems like he is understanding the car. He just needs more time. And I'm hoping that for the remainder of the season, Alpine is not going to play musical chairs for the second driver, because the rookie needs a stable environment to grow and get comfortable in the car, get comfortable with the engineers and the team. And this is extremely critical, because otherwise they are not going to be ready for 2026. For the remaining 2025 season, the goal of Alpine should be get the second driver acclimated with the team, because Pierre Gasly has been there for a while. He knows how the teams work, he knows how the car works. Franco doesn't. And instead of putting the pressure on him that, hey, you need to bring sponsors, or, 5-race deal or 6-race deals, or some shit like that, right now, because we have just seen it, I have shown you the numbers. He is finding the rhythm. He knows how to extract the performance out of the car. He just needs a little bit of extra time. Up next, we have the Sauber. What impressed me about Sauber is that they have legitimately good pace. And if they stripped more downforce away from their car, they probably would have finished even higher up. So Gabriel Bortoleto, second points finished. Big shout out to him. Great performance. Nico Hülkenberg struggled a little bit with the pace and the tire management, probably because of the downforce thing, and he had to pit once again. But after that, he was flying too, and he was putting the pressure on Oliver Bearman, who was putting the pressure on Pierre Gasly, but eventually nothing really happened. He held him off. But Gabriel Bortoleto drove an amazing race, pit at the right time, and on the radio, he was very adamant that Nico is not fast, you gotta let him by. And then Nico Hülkenberg, obviously before turn 5, he got out of the fucking way, and Gabriel Bortoleto just zipped past, and that's the last we heard from him. He kind of had a lonely race after that point. But big shout out to Sauber. I think it's now 5 races in a row, or 6 races in a row, or something like that. I think 5 races in a row that they have scored points. And I think this trend is going to continue in Hungaroring. I think it's a little bit of a technical track, so I'll give the advantage to Nico Hülkenberg. But Gabriel Bortoleto is also finding his rhythm. The podium of Nico must have given the confidence, a little bit of extra confidence to Gabby as well. So it'll be interesting to see if these guys can go ahead and, finish ahead of Williams in the constructors, because it seems like Williams have good performance, but compared to Sauber, their reliability is a little bit fucked up. So we'll see how that pans out. Up next, we have Racing Bull. There's nothing much to say about Isaac Hadjar, because he had some problems in the car, and he said after the race that he knew that in the race he will be going backwards, and backwards he went. Nobody retired, that's why he finished P20. And Liam Lawson, what a great race from him. Well managed. It took him a little bit of time to find his rhythm, to find the old Liam Lawson back. but eventually he got back here. Whatever the emotional damage that Red Bull has done to him for the first two races, after that he managed to pick himself up, and the Racing Bull is actually a fantastic car to build your confidence. However, the biggest problem with the Racing Bulls is that they're kind of always dealing with something, right? Like, for example, in this race, Isaac Hadjar has the issue. In the Silverstone race, Isaac Hadjar couldn't see and hit the back of Kimi Antonelli. So like, they're always managing these type of issues, and they're having this type of problems, which is costing them valuable points in the midfield battle. But I think they have a car which is almost as competitive as the Williams, but more reliable. So technically they should finish ahead of Williams, especially now Williams are struggling with reliability issues. So they definitely should go ahead and step their game up in order to go ahead and pip them in the constructor standings for P5, but I guess we'll see what happens. Up next, we have Williams. First, let's talk a little bit about Carlos Sainz, because there is nothing much to say. He just made some setup mistakes. Plain and simple. I think there was another race in which Alexander Albon made the similar kind of mistakes. I'm struggling to remember which one was it. I think it was Miami, where Alex made some setup changes that went to the opposite direction. May not be Miami, I'm just guessing. Carlos Sainz made the exact same mistake. That's why he started from the pit lane. And, obviously, when you make the wrong setup and then you change the setup overnight and then you start from the pit lane and it's a car that you haven't driven before, like in that setup window, I mean, you just struggle the entirety of the race, especially when it is dynamic racing conditions, especially when it is the red flag conditions, right? It kind of takes a lot away from you. So there's nothing much to say about Carlos. Albon, on the other hand, he is tearing it up right now. He is the hottest property in Formula 1 across the paddock. One key thing that Alex said in the Beyond the Grid podcast recently is that his stocks have risen since Carlos Sainz, the smooth operator, has joined the team, because now we can say decisively that Alexander Albon is a good driver. It's been 13 races now, and he is still decisively outperforming Carlos Sainz, the race winner at Ferrari. A lot of people say that he deserved to stay at Ferrari. Debatable. But Alexander Albon is the real deal. He is performing way too good at the Williams, and if it weren't for the consistency issues of Williams, I think he'd be challenging the Ferrari drivers and also especially Lewis Hamilton in the driver standings. I hope that these motherfuckers fix their issues. Alex's car has some engine cooling problems and Carlos's car has some brake cooling problems. They seem to have gotten it right, but I don't trust them, because the last two races happen in rainy conditions. For instance, like Silverstone happened in cooler conditions, it was raining, and then the same thing happened in Spa. So you never really know until you know. Hungaroring will be, I think, a good assessment. A high tech track, usually high temperature. If it rains, then again we will not know. It will work out in their favor. Hopefully that time Carlos Sainz get it set up right. But Alexander Albon and Williams, we gotta give some respect to Williams. We have to give some praise to Williams, first of all. These guys are faster than Mercedes, faster than Ferrari, and the only problem they have is that the car is a little bit unreliable, and right now their drivers are performing well as well. Like, if you just ignore this particular race, both of these two drivers are driving the crap out of the Williams, and now they're beating Mercedes and Ferrari. The thing about Mercedes is that they never really had a good car for the entirety of the ground effect era. From 2022 till today, Mercedes don't really have that good of a car. It's because of George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. It looked like the car was good. Occasionally, on some circuits, the car would perform good, like Las Vegas, like Abu Dhabi, those type of shit tracks where the temperature is low. It's not that, grip limited or gradient limited or whatever it is. So in those type of races, Mercedes is good, but Mercedes is usually shit. So they are now better than Ferrari, is what I'm trying to say. And Mercedes has been beaten by multiple customer teams. So, it's interesting how that is panning out. Big shout out to Williams. I like what James Fowles is doing. I'm excited for these guys in the 2026. Maybe, hopefully, these guys will return to the top. And they should, because they have more resources for 2026. They are running the last year's car this year. So, I mean, not much change has happened. So, I guess we will see in the next year. Up next, we have Mercedes. There's really nothing much to say, only the fact that rain has helped them secure a P5. Otherwise, Russell's pace was actually nowhere. Like, if you compare the pace of Russell and Mercedes in general, like, they have lost a bit of pace. They're not as fast or reliable as they used to be. Kimi Antonelli is trying to extract the performance that isn't there because he's seeing George Russell perform extremely well. You know, George has been in the team for many, many years, so he knows how the car works. He knows the limitation of the car. He knows where to drive it and how to drive it in which corner or which section of a track. Kimi doesn't have that knowledge or experience, and that's why he's fucking it up a lot. That's why he's making these little mistakes here and there. But in the race, I would say Kimi Antonelli had good pace. Let's compare their paces actually. Like, if you look at Antonelli, I mean, yeah, his slower laps were significantly slower, but he is actually getting there. He is finding the rhythm, and also after the pit stop, he got some performance out. He was fast. He had good rhythm. And it's a little bit unfortunate that he took multiple laps to overtake Franco Colapinto on an Alpine, which goes to show that Franco is finding his rhythm, as I mentioned earlier. But Kimi Antonelli is trying to find performance that isn't there. And George concluded it in the post-racing interviews that they have lost performance and they need to go ahead and find it. If it weren't for dynamic track conditions, where it is difficult to overtake because there is only one zone of overtaking from like between turn 1 and turn 5. That's the only place you can get close and overtake. Because of that reason, and also, you know, George Russell slotted in right after Max Verstappen and right ahead of Alexander Albon, which is a good spot. So he kind of had a lonely race. Nobody really cared about him. So he was kind of in a place where he was unbothered. But if he was, like, I guess, ahead of Max or, you know, around that area, then he would have been fucked. He would have been exposed, is what I'm trying to say. But George Russell is right. They need to go ahead and find some extra performance, but it really doesn't matter. You know, 2025, you're not going to win anything. Maybe a few podiums here and there if you're lucky. I mean, you had one win in Canada and a podium for Kimi Antonelli. Maybe you will have a similar result like that in Las Vegas, but that's really about it. Up next, we got Verstappen.com Racing. First of all, big shout out to Yuki Tsunoda for starting P7 and finishing P13. Some people will go ahead and say that, oh, it's because his strategy was fucked up. It's not his strategy. He was slow as shit. Let me go ahead and pull it up. So if you compare the pace of Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda, as you can see, the first two blue ones, dark blue ones, Verstappen's slowest lap is faster than Yuki Tsunoda's fastest lap. So anyone who says that Yuki Tsunoda is finding his groove, Christian Horner getting fired and upgrades being shipped to his car, maybe it's a little bit of the upgrades, but he is not as fast as Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen's car was running a little bit of upgrades, but he still has miles to go. One thing that I like about this is that Yuki's performance is actually consistent. He has found the window. The deviation of his pace is not that significant, is what I'm trying to say. So credit to Yuki for doing that. But in reality, he's not that fast. He needs to pull some extra performance out of the car. He's doing the best he can, I'm pretty sure. Qualified P7, which is amazing. But in the race, he needs to go ahead and work on his pace. That's basically it. And I think one more round of upgrade is coming to Yuki's car as well as Max's car in Hungary. So I guess we will see another bump in Yuki's performance. Hopefully some of the stability issues will get sorted, but I don't think that's getting sorted. I think those issues are baked into the car, which will only be reset in 2026. Hopefully they're not only designing the 2026 car around Max Verstappen. Lauren Mekies is there, so I hope that they will be designing a car for two drivers from now on. But other than that, decent performance from Max Verstappen. Actually a great performance from Max Verstappen if you consider the whole weekend, especially the sprint race. But in the main race, he couldn't clear Charles Leclerc. That's the biggest problem that Max had. Had he cleared Charles Leclerc, he could have had a sniff on Lando Norris. He could have finished P3. All of this is, woulda, coulda, shoulda, those type of conversations. But credit Charles for defending against Max Verstappen, and Max agreed that he didn't really have any kind of pace. And it was primarily because of the low downforce setting. Whatever time he was gaining on the straights, he was definitely losing it in Sector 2. And in Sector 2, Charles was also slower, which made Max even more slower. So things just got out of his hand. And, P4 is not that bad of a result considering the performance of the car and considering the struggles and the instability these guys had in their team in the recent days. I guess we will see in Hungaroring how competitive Max really is when the second round of upgrades are added to his car. Up next, we have Ferrari. First, let's talk a little bit about Lewis Hamilton. Great drive, but guy needs to have a little bit of positive outlook. He was just talking like, oh, this is a weekend to forget. I mean, I get it. It's a weekend to forget. You had some bad moments. The upgrades didn't work immediately the way you thought it would, and they kind of caught you out. And in sprint qualifying 1, you had your first spin in your entire career in a Ferrari. Many more firsts in Ferrari to come. But it was okay. Like the overall weekend, based on where you started, based on how the season has been panning out, based on how much struggle that you have been going through. I'm talking about Lewis. From the last few seasons in the ground effect era to come back from pit lane to finish P7, get some valuable points for the team, especially some valuable points over Mercedes, that's a great thing. Now let's talk a little bit about Charles Leclerc. 4 podiums in the last 6 races. This guy is driving the shit out of that car. The defense against Max Verstappen is something to behold. I don't know how he was defending against Max Verstappen in those used intermediates, because he was all over the place. Especially if you look at like in Sector 2, basically, he was struggling to exit out of every corner. He basically had zero grip. When he put the power down, the car was just twitching and he had to nurse the throttle. The thing is, he was just marginally ahead. I mean, the corners were coming really quickly. Max was gaining, but before Max gained decisively, the corner came and they had to brake, which gave a little bit of breathing space to Charles. And somehow, I don't know how, but somehow his exits from turn 1 were great. I don't know how he did that. Somehow he still managed to exit perfectly out of turn 1 to maintain that edge over Max Verstappen. And from turn 1 all the way to turn 5, he just kept it on the road, kept it clean, and had the clean up shifts. So big shout out to Charles Leclerc for outdriving the shit of that Ferrari. And I'm happy to see that he is on the podium. Hopefully many more to come. I think he is going to win a couple of races the way he's driving. We just need to be on the right track with the right setting, and they both of the McLarens to DNF. Up next, we have the best drivers on the grid according to Zach Brown, McLaren. So let's talk about Norris first, because there's nothing much to say about Oscar Piastri. He drove a perfect race. Let's talk about Lando Norris. Norris made a lot of mistakes. The first mistake he did was when the safety car rolling start happened, he got read by his teammate like a book. That's the first mistake. The second mistake is he didn't try to do anything to compromise his teammate's exit out of turn 1. He could have invited him around the outside, shoved him a little bit, run him wide, try to play some head games. He could have done something like that, but at the end of the day, he was kind of a sitting duck for the lap 1 move. Another thing that Norris could have tried at least was concede the position before turn 1 and then regain it through the slipstream battle before turn 5. He could have done that as well. But obviously, when you are racing by papaya rules and when you are a pussy, these kind of creative ideas don't come to you. And I was genuinely hoping Norris would do something sinister like that, deliberately concede the position before turn 1 and then stick close to Oscar so that you can go ahead and regain the position before turn 5. But I guess he's not that creative anymore. Then the race goes on. They have their pit stop, and I'm thinking this is Norris's another golden opportunity. He could undercut Piastri. when you heard on the radio, like, I mean, I don't know if Norris and his race engineer Will Joseph had this conversation, but when Lewis Hamilton goes in, you gotta go in too. That's literally is it. He is the best at reading the track conditions. You have to give him some respect. And the moment Lewis is diving in, you gotta go in. So Lewis goes in, the lap after that Oscar goes in, the lap after that Lando goes in. So if Lando is like, hey, Lewis is going in, I gotta come in, change the tires, he would have been much more closer to Oscar Piastri, maybe even ahead of Oscar Piastri. I don't know like what was the difference in the lap times. It was definitely going to be a few seconds. So if it was a few seconds, Oscar Piastri would not have like 8 seconds of a gap. That's something that I can guarantee you. Another thing that Norris did is that another mistake that Norris did was that he started pushing way too late. So I think on lap 36 or something like that, there was like 8 seconds of gap between these two. And Norris was just taking it easy. Bro, you gotta destroy the crap out of those tires. That's your objective. You have nothing else. Like, why are you saving those tires for? Go ahead and push as much as you can, as early as you can. So he waited for a few laps, did similar-esque lap times to Oscar Piastri, and then when he started really pushing, he was only like faster by 6/10, which is definitely not enough. Not enough to close and definitely not enough to pass. You need a second of an advantage to make the overtake stick. So that was not happening. And then he had some off-track excursions which lost him a couple of seconds. And then at the beginning of the race, we had 4 laps behind the safety car. Could have done with 1, like, or 0. We didn't need 4 laps of safety car. So there Norris potentially lost a few lap time. And then his off-track excursions happened, and then he started pushing on the hard tires a bit too late. The moment you got the tires on, you gotta go, man. So that's Norris's race. I mean, he drove pretty decent, but you know, like the overall management could have been better. And you have to be creative when it comes to devising strategies to beat your teammate. When I was saying that you need to deliberately lose the position at a particular part of the track because you can regain it at another part of the track, like in Bahrain 2022 between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. In the start-finish straight, Leclerc will deliberately let Max Verstappen pass because he knew that in the next DRS zone he's going to get the position back, and that happened. And in the race he finished ahead of Verstappen. So Norris needs to go ahead and learn these racecraft skills because Piastri is going to employ these techniques like if he gets the chance. If Norris wants to go ahead and keep his title hopes alive, I don't think he's going to win the title in 2025 anyway. But if he wants to at least put on a decent fight, he needs to go ahead and do that. Oscar Piastri, nothing much to say, drove an absolutely perfect race, made a comeback after the difficulty in Silverstone, but definitely lost a few aura points after requesting the swap in Silverstone. But either way, we're going to let that shit go. We're going to forget that, turn the page. Oscar Piastri, man of the hour, great victory in Silverstone, tricky conditions, amazing overtake, made it work, 0 mistakes. Dragged the medium tires, not dragged the medium tires, the medium tires were actually decent, but managed them pretty well. So congratulations to McLaren, maximum points once again, and the championship fight is as boring as ever. So thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.